The intent of this video is to discuss the impact the B-29 bombing campaign had on Japan's aircraft industry. We will look into the many factors that played into Japan's ability to produce combat aircraft. The reduction in combat aircraft was around 6,700 units due to the targeted bombing effort and other factors. 21st Bomber Command prioritized industrial strategic targets for destruction by bombing. This list represents the industrial target ordered by priority from a declassified Assistant Chief of the Air Staff document titled Impact Air Victory over Japan. Japan's aircraft industry was targeted for destruction as Bomber Command's priority number one and succeeded in destroying or damaging 37% of the industry's building. This chart lists the 16 Japanese airframe manufacturers active during World War II from a May 1947 United States Strategic Bombing Survey report titled The Japanese Aircraft Industry. The x-axis is a year from 1941 through 1945. The y-axis is the percent distribution share of airframes built. The area plots in the body of the chart represent each manufacturer. This table lists the wartime production contribution of each manufacturer. Japanese aircraft propellers produced is represented by this chart, where the y-axis is the number of propellers produced by the 5 manufacturers. Notice a steep decline in delivered propellers after mid-1944. End-of-war production is dramatically reduced from peak levels. The 12 Japanese engine manufacturers are listed on this table with both the number of engines produced and percent of total. During 1945, Japanese airframe, engine, and propeller manufacturers needed to adjust to 2 challenges, as discussed in this October 1945 Headquarters United States Air Force Central Pacific document titled 2605. 2605 is a Japanese calendar year of 1945. The 2 challenges were the relocation and dispersal of aircraft plants and the trend towards production of more single-engine aircraft in lieu of twin-engine aircraft. Due to the effectiveness of Bomber Command's targeting aircraft production facilities, the Japanese relocated their plants to underground and dispersed remote locations. Japan was also constructing new aircraft manufacturing plants in areas not associated with the aircraft industry. The underground dispersal effort started during the last 6 months of the war. The aircraft plant bombing campaign and the dispersal effort dramatically reduced aircraft output. Once the dispersal effort was completed, aircraft output recovered slightly. Japan also shifted from producing more single-engine fighters and less twin-engine bombers. The Japanese Air Arm was fulfilling a more defensive role, which required more fighters. Also, fighters are easier to build and consume less material resources. These images show a relocated airplane manufacturing underground cave entrance and the interior airframe machine tooling. This map shows the location of the underground plants. This area superposition chart shows the Japanese manufacturing aircraft type built during the war years. Fighters produced are in this shaded area. Bombers produced are in this shaded area. The aircraft plant bombing effort started as soon as B-29s were capable of reaching these facilities. This reduced Japanese aircraft output and did not allow for a recovery. The initial bombing reduced the planned aircraft output and also, as an unintended consequence, forced the Japanese to relocate and disperse their aircraft production plants. The Japanese prioritized the construction of aircraft over any other program from the beginning of the war. The B-29 bombing campaign from the Marianas started in November 1944 and over the next 3 months was primarily targeting the Japanese aircraft industry. Production dropped dramatically in this period. Engine production by 55%, airframes by 37%. The Japanese instituted chaotic measures to disperse the aircraft manufacturing industry. This started in November 1944 and continued throughout the war. The reduction in aircraft output was more affected by the disrupting effects of the plant relocation efforts than the aircraft industry bombing campaign. Around 55% of the aircraft industries were out of production due to the dispersal program, as discussed on this page from a 1980 Maxwell Air Force Base Air War College report titled Strategic Air War Against Japan. Plant damage can come from either a direct or indirect attack. Bombing of a specific target is a direct attack. Indirect attack damage could come from either urban area firebombing, nearby target attack, jettison of bomb loads, target error identification. Direct attacks account for 59% of the airframe plant damage, whereas indirect attacks account for the remaining 41% of plant damage. The Japanese, unlike the Germans, did not repair their bomb plants. They cleaned out the rubble and then they abandoned them. Other factors which reduced plant output included shortage of materials, transportation interruptions, lower worker morale, absenteeism, and management disorganization. These factors likely reduced the plant output double that of the output reduction attributed to bombing. This chart summarizes the direct attacks against the Japanese aircraft industry. The U.S. conducted 90 bombing mission direct attacks on the Japanese aircraft industry. 20th Army Air Force accounted for 73 of the 90 bombing missions, flying 3,353 B-29 sorties. This table rolls up the Japanese aircraft plant type, attacking force, and tons of bombs on target. The B-29s of the 20th Air Force accounted for 98% of the bombs dropped on the Japanese aircraft industry. This chart lists the parameters of all 90 direct air attacks on the Japanese aircraft industry by aircraft company name and alphabetical order. Key columns include plant city location, date of attack, tonnage dropped, percentage of building area destroyed and damaged, monthly production lost, and damage rating. This page completes the list of the 90 attacks. This chart describes the damage rating scale categories. Very heavy damage is defined as a plant that has been completely destroyed. Light damage is categorized where 5% of the plant area is destroyed with little effect on production. Heavy and medium damage fall within the very heavy and light damage categories. This chart lists the bombing accuracy of the direct attacks on the Japanese aircraft industry. 8.1% struck the plant buildings, 8.6% struck within the plant open areas, 83% missed the plant area entirely. This chart tabulates the indirect aircraft industrial attacks. The table lists the target type and the number of attacks. There were 111 indirect attacks total, which damaged or destroyed 160 aircraft plants. Let's look at an example of an indirect attack. This image from the 21st Bomber Command Tactical Mission Report represents a summary page from a city-urban firebomb attack. On June 19, 1945, 21st Bomber Command Mission 212 sent 137 B-29 bombers to drop 868 tons of cluster incendiary bombs and standard incendiary bombs. The cluster bombs contained 38 M69 napalm bomblets. This image shows the results of this firebomb mission. 66% of the city was destroyed. This firebomb city raid also indirectly destroyed a propeller plant. The propeller plant was located around here. It was totally destroyed. So what effect did the direct bombing, indirect bombing, plant dispersal efforts, material shortages, and other factors discussed have on the Japanese aircraft production? This chart graphs both the airframes produced and the number of employees for that industry. The x-axis is a year and quarter. The y-axis is the number of airframes produced and the number of employees supporting the industry. The dashed line in the body of the chart is the number of airframes produced. The solid line is the number of employees. Couple trends stick out. Both bombing and aircraft dispersal started around the end of 1944. The quantity of airframes produced dropped dramatically to around 21% of the peak levels. The number of employees increased to account for the dispersal inefficiencies and lack of skilled labor. The trends in Japanese aircraft engine production is similar to that of the airframes. There was a dramatic reduction in production while increase in the number of employees. Engine production was reduced by 84% from peak levels. The reduction in propeller production was even more significant. Propeller production was reduced by 97% from peak levels. Due to lack of materials, shortage of skilled labor, and other factors, Japan's aircraft industry was in decline by the winter of 1944-45. The industry was in decline prior to the bombing efforts. As the summer's bombing attacks increased, the level of both engine and airframes produced decreased. A critical mass of bombers were not available to provide adequate target coverage until March-April 1945. The bombing of aircraft targets occurred with insufficient bomb tonnage prior to plant dispersal. Once a critical mass of bombers were ready to target the aircraft factories, they were mostly dispersed and empty. This chart summarizes the 8 factors that contributed to a 79% reduction in the Japanese aircraft output. None of the reports provided a factor contribution breakdown. However, they are listed in order of impact based on the channel's understanding of the influencing factors. One impact due to bombing of the Japanese aircraft industry is outlined in this text snippet from the reference shown earlier. Overall, bombing and other factors denied anywhere from 6,400 to 7,200 produced aircraft through July 1945. The report goes on to speculate that had these aircraft been available for kamikaze sorties during the Okinawan invasion, they might have caused a delay in the outcome of the war. The additional aircraft units are represented by the shaded area if Japanese production continued trending without disruption. The bombing effort expended against the Japanese aircraft industry was shorter in duration and smaller in scale than that against the German aircraft industry. The bombing effort in Germany equated to around 91,000 tons over a 2.5-year period. The bombing effort in Japan equated to around 16,000 tons over a 13-month period. In summary, the bombing of Japanese aircraft factories, either directly or indirectly, and other factors contributed to a dramatic reduction in aircraft output by some 79% during the last months of the war. The bombing campaign also induced the Japanese to disperse their aircraft plants. This disruption caused a greater reduction in aircraft output than the bombing efforts. Overall, it is estimated that the 8 factors reduced the Japanese aircraft output between 6,400 and 7,200 units. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider engaging by commenting or liking and subscribing to the channel World War II U.S. Bombers.